the first time Sebastian Langford noticed the bread. He thought perhaps he had left it there himself in some fog of exhaustion and forgotten it by morning. But when it appeared again the next dawn, still warm and wrapped in a clean cloth, he knew someone was leaving gifts on his doorstep, and the mystery gnawed at him through every waking hour. He had moved to this isolated homestead 6 months ago, seeking distance from the world and the memories that haunted him. The war had ended 3 years prior, but Sebastian carried it in his bones, in the way his hands shook when thunder rolled across the valley, in the nightmares that woke him gasping. The frontier offered solitude, a crumbling cottage he could repair with his own hands, and fields he could work until his body ached too much to think. He had no neighbors for miles, only the forest that pressed close on 3 sides and the road that led back to a town he visited once a month for supplies. The bread kept coming. Every morning for a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. Sometimes it was dark rye, dense and filling. Other times it was softer, with herbs baked into the crust. Once there were sweet rolls dotted with dried berries. Sebastian ate every piece, and each bite tasted of care, of someone who knew their craft and took pride in it. He began to wonder if he was losing his mind. Who would do this? And why? He left a note one morning, weighted down with a stone. "Thank you. Please let me repay your kindness." But the note remained untouched, and the next morning brought fresh bread regardless, as if his words meant nothing or perhaps had never been seen at all. Sebastian decided to catch his mysterious benefactor. He woke before dawn, when the sky was still black and stars burned cold overhead. He positioned himself in the woodshed that stood 20 paces from his front door, leaving the door cracked just enough to see through. The air was frigid and his breath misted white. He wrapped himself in a heavy cloak and waited. An hour passed. His feet grew numb. He was beginning to think he had missed her, or that perhaps today would be the day the bread stopped coming, when he heard it. Footsteps, soft despite their weight, moving with practiced stealth across the packed earth of his yard. A figure emerged from the tree line, silhouetted against the slowly lightening sky. She was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with an athlete's controlled grace. As she drew closer to his step, the growing dawn revealed what Sebastian had somehow already guessed, but still felt shock ripple through him at seeing. Green skin, darker than spring leaves, closer to the deep color of summer foliage. Pointed ears that twitched, listening. And when she bent to place the wrapped bundle on his doorstep, he saw the small tusks that curved up from her lower jaw, an orc. Sebastian's heart hammered against his ribs. He had fought orcs during the war. He had killed them. He still dreamed about their faces sometimes, the way they had looked at him in those final moments. But he had also seen orc villages burned, orc children fleeing, and he had begun to question everything he had been told about who the monsters really were. That questioning had driven him here, to isolation, to a place where he would not have to choose sides anymore. The orc girl straightened, glancing around with obvious nervousness. She could not have been more than 20, younger than Sebastian's own 26 years. She wore simple clothes, a tunic and trousers that had been patched many times, and her dark hair was pulled back in a thick braid. Even in the dim light, he could see the care she had taken, the way the bread was wrapped perfectly, the way she set it down so gently. She turned to go, and Sebastian found himself moving before thought could stop him. He pushed open the woodshed door. The hinges creaked, the orc girl froze, then she bolted. "Wait," Sebastian called, stumbling out of the shed. His numb feet betrayed him, and he nearly fell. "Please wait. I just want to thank you." But she was already gone, disappearing into the forest with a speed that left him breathless. He stood in his yard as the sun finally broke over the horizon, holding the still warm bread in his hands, and felt more alone than he had in months. The next morning there was no bread. Sebastian waited on his step as dawn broke, hoping, but nothing came. The day felt hollow. He worked his fields, repaired a section of fence, chopped wood, but his thoughts kept returning to the orc girl, the fear in her eyes when she had heard him. The way she had run as if he were the monster. Maybe he was. That night he baked bread himself. It was clumsy work. He had watched his mother do it 1,000 times in his childhood, but watching and doing were different things. The loaf came out lopsided and slightly burned on one side, but it was edible. In the morning, before dawn, he walked into the forest. He did not go far, just to the edge where the trees grew thick. He found a flat stone and left the bread there, wrapped in the same cloth she had used, which he had washed carefully. Beside it, he placed a note. "I am sorry I frightened you. Thank you for your kindness. It meant more than you know." For 3 days, nothing happened. The bread remained on the stone, growing stale. Sebastian checked every morning and evening, his hope dimming. On the 4th day, the bread was gone. In its place was a new loaf, perfect and golden, still warm. And beneath it, a scrap of paper with 2 words in careful, blocky letters. "You are welcome." Sebastian felt something unfold in his chest, a warmth he had not experienced in years. He left another loaf the next day, better than his first attempt. She left one in return. They began a strange exchange, trading bread and brief notes. He learned her name was Ragna Northwood. She learned his. He told her he had been a soldier but wanted only peace now. She told him she had been cast out by her clan for refusing to raid human settlements. "They said I was weak," she wrote, "but I could not kill people whose only crime was being born different from me." Sebastian read those words 12 times, pressing the paper flat against his kitchen table. He wrote back, "That does not make you weak, it makes you brave." Weeks passed. The notes grew longer. Ragna told him about her life. She lived in a cave deeper in the forest, surviving on what she could hunt and forage. She had learned to bake from her mother, who had been killed in a human raid when Ragna was 15. She was lonely, she admitted, and she had started leaving bread for Sebastian because she had seen him working his fields and recognized something in his isolation that mirrored her own. Sebastian told her about the war, about the things he had done and seen, about the guilt that ate at him. He told her about the nightmares and the shaking hands. He told her things he had never told another living soul. One morning, after 2 months of exchanged bread and notes, Sebastian found a message that made him act without thinking. "I am sick. Fever. Do not come. Will be well soon." He came anyway. He followed the subtle trail she had left over months of walking between his homestead and her home. It took him most of the morning, but he finally found the cave, a shallow opening in a rocky hillside. He called her name from outside, not wanting to startle her. The sound that answered was weak, a rasping cough. Sebastian ducked inside. The cave was surprisingly tidy. She had made it a home with what little she had. A bedroll, a few cooking implements, shelves carved into the stone holding preserved foods. And on the bedroll, shivering despite the layers of blankets, was Ragna. Her skin looked dull. The vibrant green faded to something gray. Her tusks seemed too large for her face, which had grown gaunt. When she saw him, her eyes widened in alarm. "No," she rasped. "You should not be here. If you get sick." "Then I get sick," Sebastian said firmly. He knelt beside her, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. She was burning up. "When did this start?" "3 days ago." She tried to sit up and failed, falling back with a groan. "Please go, I will recover." "You will die without help," Sebastian said bluntly. "And I am not going to let that happen. I am going to take care of you, Ragna. Let me do this." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why, I am an orc, your enemy." "You are my friend," Sebastian said, and realized as he spoke that it was true. Through their notes, through their shared bread, she had become the closest thing he had to family in this world. And friends do not leave each other to suffer alone. He spent the next week living in the cave, tending to her fever. He made broths from the preserved vegetables she had stored, coaxing her to eat. He brought cool water from the stream outside, wiping her face and arms to bring down the fever. He held her when the chills racked her body, and he cleaned up after her when the sickness made her too weak to move. Ragna fought him at first, embarrassed and ashamed, insisting she did not need his help. But as the days passed and her strength failed, she had no choice but to accept his care. And slowly, as the fever broke and color returned to her skin, something shifted between them. Sebastian learned the way she looked first thing in the morning, her hair tangled, and her eyes still heavy with sleep. He learned the sound of her laugh when he told her a particularly bad joke to distract her from discomfort. He learned the strength in her hands when she gripped his during a particularly bad bout of chills. He learned that her tusks were sensitive, that touching them made her shiver, and he was careful to avoid them when he wiped her face. Ragna learned that Sebastian sang quietly to himself when he thought she was sleeping, old songs from his childhood. She learned that he blamed himself for far more than he should, carrying guilt that belonged to the world, not to him. She learned that his hands were gentle despite their scars, that his eyes were kind despite the shadows in them. She learned that he had nightmares too, because he dozed off sitting beside her bedroll one afternoon and woke gasping, and she had held his hand until he calmed. By the 8th day, Ragna could sit up on her own. By the 10th, she could walk to the stream with his support. On the 12th day, she insisted on baking bread. "You have eaten my preserved supplies," she said, though her tone was teasing. "The least I can do is make you proper food." They worked side by side in the cave, which felt suddenly smaller with both of them moving around. Sebastian kept finding excuses to be near her, to pass her ingredients, to adjust the fire. Every accidental brush of their hands felt electric. Ragna kept glancing at him when she thought he was not looking, her green cheeks darkening to something that might have been a blush. The bread came out perfectly. They sat at the mouth of the cave, watching the sun set through the trees, eating warm slices with wild honey she had collected months ago. "I do not know how to thank you," Ragna said quietly. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first," Sebastian replied. "Those months after I arrived here, I was barely living. I was going through motions, waiting to stop hurting. Your bread gave me something to look forward to. Your notes reminded me I was not completely alone. You brought me back to life, Ragna. I just returned the favor." She turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes were luminous. "Do you really see me as a friend?" "Yes," Sebastian said. Then, because something in him demanded honesty, demanded bravery for once in his careful, wounded life, he added, "And maybe more than that. If you would want that, if it is not too strange or impossible or—" Ragna kissed him. It was brief, hesitant, her tusks brushing against his cheek. When she pulled back, her expression was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. "I have wanted to do that since you came crashing out of your woodshed like a madman to thank me for bread," she whispered. Sebastian laughed, and it felt like the first real laugh he had had in years. He cupped her face in his hands, careful and reverent. "I have wanted to touch you like this since I saw you in the dawn light and thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen." "I am an orc," she said, but there was wonder in her voice now, not shame. "I know," Sebastian said, "and I am a human who killed your people. And somehow, despite all of that, despite the entire world telling us this is wrong, I think I am falling in love with you." Ragna's breath hitched. "The world will hate us for this." "Let it," Sebastian said fiercely. I have spent years caring what the world thinks, letting it tell me who to kill and who to save. I am done with that. I only care what you think, what you feel. I feel like I have been waiting my entire life to find you, Ragna said and kissed him again. They stayed in the cave for 3 more days, learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with sickness and care. Sebastian learned that Ragna loved the smell of rain, that she could name every plant in the forest and its use, that she hummed while she cooked. Ragna learned that Sebastian was ticklish just below his ribs, that he had wanted to be a carpenter before the war, that he dreamed of building a real home. "Build it with me," Ragna said one night as they lay side by side, looking up at the stars visible through the cave entrance. "Build a home for both of us." "Your clan," Sebastian began, worry creeping into his voice, "if they find out you are with a human." "They cast me out," Ragna said firmly. "They do not get a say in my life anymore. And if they come looking for trouble, they will find I am not as weak as they believe." "My town," Sebastian countered, "if they see us together." "Are you ashamed of me?" Ragna's voice was carefully neutral, but he heard the hurt beneath. "Never," Sebastian said fiercely, rolling to face her. "I am afraid for you. People can be cruel. They might try to hurt you." "Then we will protect each other," Ragna said simply. "Is that not what people do when they love each other?" Sebastian realized she was right. He had been alone for so long, carrying his burdens in isolation, that he had forgotten what it meant to share a life with someone. To have someone watch your back while you watched theirs. They returned to his homestead together. Ragna brought her few possessions, and they spent the days working side by side. She taught him which forest plants were edible, how to set snares properly, how to read weather in the way the birds flew. He taught her about maintaining crops, about the rotation of fields, about the carpentry he had learned from his father before the war. Together, they began to expand the cottage. Sebastian had the skills to build, and Ragna had the strength to lift beams and haul stones. They worked through the late autumn, racing the coming winter. Neighbors were far enough away that no one noticed the orc woman living with the reclusive veteran, and Sebastian found he did not care if they ever did. The first snow fell in early December. By then, they had added a new room to the cottage, expanded the hearth, and stocked enough food to last through the coldest months. They had also added a real bed, wide enough for 2, with a feather mattress Sebastian had shyly purchased on his monthly trip to town. Winter was quiet and perfect. They spent long evenings by the fire, Ragna baking while Sebastian carved small figures from wood, a hobby he had abandoned during the war. She made animals and he lined them up on the mantel: a bear, a wolf, a deer. And finally, working for weeks in secret, a small figurine of Ragna herself, captured in the moment she laughed, her head thrown back and joy evident in every carved line. He gave it to her on the winter solstice. She cried, cradling it like something precious and fragile. "No one has ever made me a gift," she whispered. "Then I will make you one every day for the rest of our lives," Sebastian promised. They made love that night with snow falling softly outside, the fire burning low, and Sebastian thought he had never been happier. Every scar, every nightmare, every moment of pain had led him here, to this woman, to this life. He would not change a single thing. Spring came slowly, the snow melting to reveal the green world beneath. They planted a larger garden together, Ragna using her knowledge of the forest to add medicinal herbs Sebastian had never considered. They repaired the fence, added a proper chicken coop, and began planning a barn for when they could afford a cow. It was in late spring, nearly a year after Sebastian had first found bread on his doorstep, that trouble arrived. He was in the field when he saw them coming up the road. 5 orcs, all male, all carrying weapons. Sebastian's blood ran cold. He dropped his hoe and ran for the cottage. Ragna was inside, kneading dough. She looked up when he burst through the door, alarm flashing across her face at his expression. "Orcs," Sebastian gasped. Coming up the road, 5 of them, armed. Ragna's face hardened. She wiped her hands on her apron, then moved to the corner where she kept her own weapons, a bow and a quiver of arrows. Sebastian had not asked where she had gotten them. Some questions were better left unasked. "My brothers," she said quietly. "They have found me. Brothers." Sebastian's mind raced. "Will they hurt you?" "They will try to take me back," Ragna said. She strung her bow with practiced ease. "They will say I have shamed our clan by living with a human. They will say I need to be punished, re-educated." Her tusks flashed in something that was not quite a smile. "They are going to be disappointed." Sebastian grabbed his own bow from where it hung on the wall. He had not touched it since moving here, had hoped never to use it again. But for Ragna, he would do anything. They stood together on the porch as the orcs approached. Sebastian could see the resemblance now. They all had Ragna's cheekbones, her pointed ears. But where she moved with grace, they swaggered with arrogance. Where her eyes held kindness, theirs held contempt. The largest orc, his skin a darker green than Ragna's and his tusks more pronounced, stopped 10 paces from the porch. He looked at his sister with disgust. "Ragna," he said, his voice a rumble, "you have disgraced us enough. It is time to come home." "I am home," Ragna said calmly. "You are trespassing, Ragnar. Leave." "You live with a human," another brother spat. "You share his bed. You have become an abomination." Sebastian felt fury rise in him, hot and fierce. He stepped forward, but Ragna's hand on his arm stopped him. "I share my home with the man I love," Ragna said clearly. "A man who has shown me more respect and kindness than our clan ever did. You cast me out for refusing to murder innocent people, Ragnar. You have no right to judge how I live now." "That human killed our kind," Ragnar snarled, pointing at Sebastian. "I can smell the blood on him. I can see it in his eyes. He is a soldier, a murderer, and you debase yourself by lying with him." "I was a soldier," Sebastian said, his voice steady despite the rage shaking through him. "I killed orcs. I also killed humans. I did what I was told because I was young and stupid and thought I was serving something greater than myself. I was wrong. And I have spent every day since trying to atone for it. But I will not apologize for loving Ragna. She is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I will die before I let you take her." The brothers exchanged glances. They had expected Ragna to be alone, Sebastian realized. They had expected an easy capture. Instead, they found her armed, defiant, and with someone willing to fight for her. "You cannot win," Ragnar said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. "There are 5 of us, 2 of you. Then you will need all 5, Ragna said coldly. She drew an arrow and knocked it in one fluid motion. "Because I will not go quietly, and neither will Sebastian." "Is this really how you want this to end, brother? With blood, more violence, more death?" For a long moment no one moved. The spring wind rustled through the trees, birds sang in the distance, and the sun beat down warm on the field. Sebastian could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the familiar weight of the bow in his hand. He had been here before, standing at the edge of violence, waiting to see if peace was possible. A younger brother, smaller than the others, spoke up. "She looks happy, Ragnar." "When have we ever seen her happy?" Ragnar rounded on him. "She is our sister, our blood. She belongs with us." "She belongs where she chooses," the younger brother said, more firmly. "We came to make sure she was alive, not to drag her back in chains. Look at her. She is well. She is fed. She has a home. Maybe we should just leave her in peace." "She is with a human," Ragnar spat. "So what?" the younger brother shot back. "Is she harming anyone? Is she raiding villages, killing innocents? No. She is living quietly, bothering no one. The clan cast her out. We have no authority over her anymore. Sebastian watched the conflict play out among the brothers. Two seemed to agree with the younger one, shifting uncomfortably. Ragnar and one other still looked mutinous, but the balance had tipped. If we return and say we could not find her, the younger brother said carefully, no one will question it. The clan has already forgotten about her. They have moved on. We can do the same. Ragnar's jaw worked, his fists clenching and unclenching. Finally, he looked at Ragna. If you ever need help, if he hurts you, if you need to come home. This is my home, Ragna said, but her voice was gentler now. Thank you, Ragnar, but I am where I want to be. Ragnar nodded once, sharp and angry. Then he turned and stalked back down the road. 4 brothers followed, the youngest pausing to nod respectfully to Ragna before leaving. Sebastian and Ragna stood on the porch until the orcs disappeared from sight. Then Ragna lowered her bow, her hands shaking. Are you all right? Sebastian asked, pulling her close. I thought I would have to hurt them, Ragna whispered into his chest. I thought it would come to violence. But it did not, Sebastian said, stroking her hair. Your brother, the younger one, he saw the truth. He saw that you are happy. Maybe there is hope for this world after all. Ragna laughed, though it sounded a bit watery. Maybe there is. That night, as they lay in bed, Sebastian holding Ragna close, he made a decision. In the morning, he asked her to marry him. He had no ring, nothing proper to offer. Just himself, his cottage, his scarred hands and damaged soul. He knelt on their bedroom floor as dawn light streamed through the window, and he took her hand. Ragna Northwood, he said, I cannot promise you an easy life. I cannot promise the world will accept us, but I can promise that I will love you every day we have together. I can promise to build a life with you, to protect you, to stand beside you no matter what comes. Will you marry me? Ragna pulled him up, tears streaming down her green cheeks. Yes, she said. 1,000 times yes. They married themselves in the forest, in a clearing Ragna had shown him where wildflowers grew in abundance. There was no priest, no witnesses except the trees and the birds. They spoke vows they wrote themselves, promising partnership and love and loyalty. Sebastian wove flowers into Ragna's hair, and she held his hands like they were the most precious things in the world. I take you as my husband, Ragna said, her voice ringing clear in the quiet woods. My partner, my friend, my love, from this day until my last day. I take you as my wife, Sebastian replied. My home, my heart, my reason for waking each morning, from this day until my last day. They kissed as husband and wife, and Sebastian felt something settle in his soul. He had been looking for this his entire life without knowing it. Not just love, though he loved Ragna more than he had thought possible, but belonging, purpose. A reason to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm. The seasons turned. Summer came, hot and lush. Their garden flourished, providing more food than they could eat. Sebastian built a larger table, and they began inviting travelers to share meals. Word spread slowly of the veteran and his orc wife who offered hospitality to anyone who came in peace. Some travelers turned away in disgust. Others stayed, curious and cautious. A few became friends. An elderly woman who sold herbs in the nearby town began visiting regularly, teaching Ragnar recipes and taking away loaves of bread to sell. A young couple, human and elf, stopped by and stayed for 3 days, grateful to find others who had crossed the boundaries of their birth. In autumn, as the leaves turned gold and red, Ragna told Sebastian she was pregnant. He cried. He had not thought he could have children, had assumed the war had broken something fundamental in him. But here was proof that life could come from love, that something new and innocent could exist even in a world that had seen so much darkness. "Are you happy?" Ragna asked, wiping tears from his face with gentle fingers. "I am terrified," Sebastian admitted, "and happier than I have ever been." Their daughter was born in the spring, as the world renewed itself. She had green skin like her mother and human eyes like her father. She had tiny tusks that would grow as she aged, and lungs that could wail loud enough to wake the entire valley. They named her Sira, which meant peace in the old language Sebastian's mother had taught him. Sebastian held his daughter and felt the last of his nightmares lose their grip. He had spent so many years haunted by the lives he had taken. Now he cradled the life he had helped create, and understood that redemption was not about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth living in. Ragna recovered from the birth with the same strength she brought to everything. Within a week, she was up and moving, though Sebastian fussed over her constantly. Within a month, they had fallen into a routine of shared parenting, passing Sira between them as they worked the farm and the home. On a warm summer evening, when Sira was 3 months old, they sat on their porch as the sun set. Sebastian held his daughter while Ragna leaned against him, exhausted but content. The fields were green, the cottage stood strong, and smoke rose from the chimney in a thin, peaceful line. "Do you remember the first time I caught you leaving bread?" Sebastian asked. Ragna laughed softly. "You looked so shocked when I ran. I thought for sure you would hate me, would drive me away." "I think I started falling in love with you that morning," Sebastian said. "When I saw you treating a stranger with such kindness, expecting nothing in return. You taught me how to be human again, Ragna. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." "You saved me too," Ragna said. She reached out to touch Sira's tiny hand, marveling as always at the perfect little fingers. "I was so lonely before I found you. I thought I would spend my life hiding in that cave, never belonging anywhere. But you gave me a home, a family, a reason to believe the world could be better." Sira cooed in Sebastian's arms, reaching for her mother. Ragna took her, cradling her close, and Sebastian wrapped his arms around both of them, his wife, his daughter, his family. "I used to think peace was just the absence of war," Sebastian said quietly, "but it is so much more than that. It is this. It is sitting on our porch with the people we love, watching the sun set, knowing we built something good. It is waking up each day and choosing love over fear. It is our daughter growing up in a world where maybe, just maybe, she would not have to hide what she is." "We will make sure of that," Ragna said fiercely. "We will teach her to be proud, to be strong, to choose kindness like we did." "Like you did first," Sebastian corrected gently. "You were brave enough to leave bread for a stranger. Everything good in my life started with that choice." Ragna smiled, kissing his cheek. "Then I suppose we have warm bread to thank for all of this." They sat together as stars began to appear in the darkening sky, 3 people who should not have been a family but were, against all odds and expectations. In the distance, wolves howled their evening songs. In the cottage, bread cooled on the counter, filling the air with the scent of yeast and grain and home. Sebastian thought about all the paths that had led him here. The war, the guilt, the isolation. The mornings he had woken to find gifts on his doorstep. The moment he had hidden in his woodshed and seen an orc girl treating him with a gentleness the world said should not exist. Every scar, every choice, every moment of pain and fear and hope had woven together to create this life. "I love you," he said to Ragna, because the words never felt like enough, but he said them anyway, as often as he could. "I love you too," Ragna replied, and Sira made a small, happy sound as if agreeing with them both. The night deepened around them, but they stayed on the porch a while longer, reluctant to break the spell of the moment. Tomorrow would bring work and challenges. the endless tasks of raising a child and maintaining a home. But tonight was perfect, complete unto itself. Tonight was peace, hard-won and precious, and they held it close. Eventually, they went inside. Sebastian stoked the fire while Ragna settled Sira in the cradle he had built during the winter, carving protective symbols into the wood with the same hands that had once held weapons. They prepared for bed with the comfortable silence of people who had shared a life long enough to need no words. As they lay down together, Ragna's head on Sebastian's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she thought about the girl she had been. Cast out alone, certain that kindness was weakness. That girl had left bread on a stranger's doorstep because she could not stand the thought of anyone suffering the loneliness she felt. That simple act had changed everything. "What are you thinking?" Sebastian asked, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That sometimes the smallest gestures carry the most weight," Ragna said. "That choosing to be kind, even when the world tells you not to be, can change the course of a life, maybe many lives." Sebastian kissed the top of her head. "We will teach Sira that. We will raise her to believe that love is stronger than hate, that bridges are better than walls." "She will be extraordinary," Ragna said with certainty. "She already is." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, their daughter sleeping soundly nearby. Outside, the forest whispered its ancient songs. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. And in a small cottage on the frontier, a family that should not have existed but did slept peacefully, proof that even in a world divided, love could find a way to grow. Years would pass, and Sira would indeed grow up extraordinary, teaching others through her mere existence that half-orc children could be beautiful, could be loved, could be the bridge between worlds. Other mixed families would find their way to the homestead, seeking the acceptance they found nowhere else. The cottage would expand again and again, becoming a way station for those who did not fit the narrow definitions of their birth. But that was the future, still unwritten. For now, there was just the night, the warmth of the fire, and the sound of 3 people breathing in the darkness. A human man, an orc woman, and their daughter, sleeping safe and loved in the home they had built together. And if anyone had asked Sebastian in that moment if he believed in miracles, he would have pointed to the bread that had appeared on his doorstep one dawn, left by gentle hands that refused to let him face the morning alone. He would have said that miracles were real and that they often came in the simplest forms: warm bread, a kind gesture, the courage to choose love over fear. Those were the miracles that saved the world, one person at a time, one morning at a time, one loaf at a time. And they lived happily, completely and peacefully ever after, adding their story to the countless others that proved love was always worth the risk, always worth the fight, and always, always worth believing in.